You see, for all of that to happen, again, you cannot do it too suddenly, because if you do it too suddenly, you overload the system. So it has to be systematic and gradual, and therefore sustainable.
Is there a relationship between your program and also the program of states? Because we've seen all of those talks and bickering. States will say,
yes,
well, they're not getting enough, or it's been diverted. How do you give some of these funds to the states, and does it fall within your purview to also tell them what to use such funds for?
Okay, there are two important pieces of information there. The first is that the entire subsidy fund is divided between the federal government, the state governments, and local governments. Federal government gets only about 42% of the total funds. 54% will go to the states and local governments, and 4% will be used for environmental things and so on and so forth. So that 54% is entirely the responsibility of the states to decide how to spend it. Now, what has happened in that respect, information number one, is that some states have come to us to discuss with us what we're doing so that they can understand the systems we're using and use some systems in their own cases as well. So there is a certain degree of collaboration, but we cannot dictate to them what to do with their funds.
Okay.
It is their responsibility. The second piece of information we cannot give you is that when you want to, as we say, we want to offer employment to 5,000 young people in each state.
Annually?
For the first year anyway.
Okay.
5,000 people, young people in each state. Now, because we are in the federal territory, we cannot go to every state and identify 500 individuals. So we have a state implementation committee that reports to us. Now that state implementation committee is made up of the people in the employment department, the employment provision department, and some other citizens who can now identify individuals. So for instance, in Ekiti State, we were told only about a week ago, they've now found 3,000 people. In some other states, 1,000, 2,000. Countrywide, this is happening. And it is important to understand that the reason why that is happening is that to be effective, this youth employment program to be effective, there has to be somebody in the state who can identify people and say, yes, these ones are genuinely unemployed and therefore need support.
I'm sure you might have heard about what was said about states and political parties taking charge of some of these funds. So when you say the funds go to the states, does it go to the government or how? Because
well, obviously it goes to the government. And I think, you know, these things that are said about political leanings and so on, who is surprised? This is the way that things go in this country. It's unfortunate, but we have to understand that many people perceive political opportunity in everything that happens. And so even when you're doing your best and say, well, we've identified 10 people, the first question they ask is, what party do they belong to? And that is so totally irrelevant to the issue, but you can't help it.
Wow. Okay, we have some questions coming through from those who are watching. If I must say, is to ask you, if you were the president, with your expertise in management, would you toe this Shopee line?
It's a very interesting hypothetical question, isn't it? If I were president, would I toe Shopee line? Let me say this, that if I were president, I would probably know more than I do now, because the president has more information about this economy and how it is managed than I have at the moment. And therefore, my answer would be, I would probably find a line that responded to the level of knowledge that I had at the time.
Before Shopee was set up, there was a lot of cry about refineries. And I think the government at the time did say that, okay, we'll do something about the refineries, but the news coming up thereafter was that it wasn't looking as though it was going to happen. I have people asking now, is Shopee thinking along that line, doing anything about refineries?
Again, my answer is we have to, the Shopee committee has to work within the boundaries of what the federal government itself wants to do. We cannot create a different program from that of the federal government. So the federal government is the one that decides what attention to give, for instance, to refineries. And if it decides that it wants to apply the Shopee funds to the building or improvement of refineries, I have no doubt we will get there. But it has to be federal government policy.
Let me take some questions here from some of those people sending in their tweets here. This one from Henry Asede. He wants us to ask you, Dr. Kolade, how do Nigerians know the amount of money that come to Shopee every year from the increment of petrol?
Well, if you look in the media, in the press, you'll find that the Minister of Finance publishes every month the amount of money that has been accrued into this fund, which is 15 billion naira a month. And that is published. So it's for everybody to see.
How are you going to ensure, I mean, you said you had to also put a framework in place to ensure transparency,
yes,
to ensure that everything is accounted for. Yeah. What is that framework like?
The framework is as follows. We know that the funds are coming in at the rate of 15 billion naira a month. And there is an account at the Central Bank of Nigeria where that money is going. Now, for every amount that is taken out of those funds, the procedure is that there is a certificate issued by the PIU, the Project Implementation Unit, which says this contractor or this project has gone to stage 1 and is now due to be funded to the tune of, say, 200 million naira. Now that certificate comes to us as the Shopee committee. We verify that everything is correct. We then approve that 200 million should come out of the fund. Now that goes to the Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation.
How do you verify? Do you visit the site again?
Oh yes, yes. The members, there are 21 members of our committee. And we've broken ourselves up into subcommittees. So there's a subcommittee, for instance, that works on roads and bridges. There's one that works on rails. There's one that works on, different things like that. So the members of that subcommittee must go and physically verify what they've been told. It is only after they've done that, they come back to the full committee and say, yes, we verified this and we agree that the money should be paid. Excuse me. When that is done, we then send a signal to the DG Budget Office and say, sorry, this is where we are. Now, the DG Budget Office has the responsibility as accounting officer to make sure that all procedures, such as procurement and whatever other institutions are present, have been observed. If he agrees that that has been done, he sends a signal to Central Bank, says, pay 200 million to this contractor in that account.